suppose if you were listening to our readings this morning, you would actually hear a correlation between the first reading and the second reading. Both of them are speaking of Jerusalem. And of course, when we listen to those particular readings, and we listen to them very carefully, we begin to see something happening within them. There is I suppose one would call it an urgency to listen, an urgency to understand, an urgency to take heed of what is being said. I know that when I was young, and I often thought about the end of life. Mind you, it often kept me awake at night. I would listen and try to figure out what does he mean, or what was meant by the last judgment. I used to imagine myself standing before God like in a courtroom for all the world. And as I stood before God, I was the only person there. But every now and then a light would shine around me, and I would see my friends, the people I knew. All of these people were listening to what I was saying. And there was Jesus sitting before me with a little book. It was pretty thick, by the way, for me. And he would ask me questions about it. Everything that I had did throughout my life is being revealed. I didn't take much notice of it really, but it was kind of scary. But as I got older, I seemed to brush that idea away. It's amazing. The more and more older we get, maybe it is because we get more educated or not something, we don't think in that way. But that particular standing before Jesus in the last judgment is something I haven't thought about in a long time. And if I do think about it, it's just a fleeting kind of, oh yeah, it's going to happen. But that's it. We don't take it seriously enough. And of course, in this gospel, we hear about that last judgment. What's going to happen, you know? He's telling us that our lives, sometimes as we're coming up to the end of them, we are to take stock of what we have done. We are to examine our lives. Not just from the time that we are young, but every day of our lives. That sometimes takes a little bit of hard work, by the way. It's not an easy thing to do. Because when we take stock of our lives, we are brought before God in a way that we have to make amends for what we have done. It's not just going to, I suppose, be washed away with the flick of a hand. There's a lot more involved. And normally we don't think that way. We don't want to think that way, maybe. That's probably the truth of it all. Is we don't want to think about the judgment of the last day. We put it back here in the back of our minds because it's easier. It can be, something I don't have to deal with. I remember one day when I was doing chaplaincy work up in Connecticut, at Middletown Hospital. One of the first jobs I was told to do was you were to go and visit the sick. I had done it down in Miami, and I had done it in the other colleges, and it was a great experience, of course, is to go, and I would get a list. And on the list would be the name of all my Catholics, as I put it. And I would go to all these particular people. And I would start at the first and work my way to try and get to each and every one of them that were in the hospital. And one day I was doing my job diligently. I would start at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I knew that I had until 5 o'clock that evening to get to see all these people. And it just seemed to be a long list that particular day. The pager went off on my hip, and I'm kind of, why is this going off? This has nothing got to do with me, in a sense. So I looked it up, and it said, go to the nearest desk, get a phone, and dial that number. So I go over, I dialed the number, and it said, get down here fast. There's someone in need of prayer. So I get down, I go down into the emergency ward, and I meet a young man of about 27 years of age who has been diagnosed with cancer. Very extreme cancer. They told him that he had about maybe 4 weeks to live. And he asked for someone to pray for him. He was not Catholic. And I went, and I had no idea what to do. And I stood with him, and I prayed with him, and it was a kind of like just going through the motions in a way. And as we were praying, he reached out and caught my hand and says, I am not ready to die. I've got many things I have to make amends for. I'm stunned. I didn't know what to say. And I said, well, God always loves you and forgives you. And he put down his hand and he said, that is right, he said. God may love me, he says, but I do not love myself. I did these things. And how now, he says, do I make amends for them? In the same way, I suppose, that kind of shocked me and brought back to me that picture of me standing before God. How now do I make amends when I'm dead? And I'm standing before God in the last judgment. And he asks me the questions, what have you done wrong? Everything that I have done is going to be revealed before him. When the New Jerusalem comes, the sign that we see in this gospel is that we too are to be always in constant repentance. We are to be in constant mending the gaps and the things that we have done in our lives. We are to be taking stock of what we are doing with our lives at this very moment in time. Everything that we do, no matter what it is something that we have to take stock of. How do we manage to do this? Where do we get the strength, the time, the understanding that comes out of it? For me, in order for me to do the things that I have, or to undo the things that I have done wrong, I would say I'd have to kneel before the Blessed Sacrament every day of my life, just to make a small amends for what I have done. Because every time we do something that is sinful, we're not just hurting ourselves, we're hurting those around us. And therefore, sin becomes a greater problem in our lives. Our thoughts. Many of us have bad thoughts at times. Our lives, our unforgiveness, our harshness, our hardness of heart, even in towards and charity, that we sometimes do not even think about when we say something to someone. We don't even put charity within it. We just blurt it out and say, there you go, that's it, do that and you cannot go on. Without even thinking about what we have said, or to the person that's around us who hears us what we say. This New Jerusalem is a sign. We can read the signs. You look around you, you can see that the grass is getting a little bit yellow now, and it's getting a little bit colder. We know that winter is on the way. We have to turn on the heat. In a few months from now, we'll be looking around, we'll see the flowers coming up, we'll see the grass begin to grow again. And we know that summer is on its way. Can we not see the same thing with our spiritual lives? Can we not see that we see the signs before us that we should be doing things differently? We should be opening ourselves up to the understanding of God's holy love. Are we blind to this? That's a good question. We get blinder as we get older, I think. And I don't think it is real blindness. I think it is comfortable is the problem. We become comfortable. And as we get more and more comfortable with our lives, so does our spiritual life become comfortable. We do not want change. So today let us pray that we may see the signs that God has given us and be able to find in our hearts that sense of change. That we may be able to call and stand before Jesus Christ, knowing that the judgment that he will give us is a true and understanding of repentance. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.